Okay, so I also wanted to talk about this pretty stupid article out of the Washington Post by Gillian Brockell. Some white people don't want to hear about slavery at plantations built by slaves. And she's complaining about tourists who go to these plantations, and they've written negative reviews online. Now, the key word here is some white people, okay? Now, some white people eat their boogers. Some white people think the earth is flat. You know, some people sleep with socks on. Like, I don't understand. But you can say some white people, some black people, some any people. And so it's clearly a leading headline. But it does touch on an interesting point. And that point is that people are going to these southern plantations and thinking that it should be like this rustic, charming type thing, but finding out that, oh, wow, the slave history is actually pretty terrifying. Well, no shit, come on. I mean, if you're going to go to a slave plantation, of course you're going to encounter that stuff. Now, one interesting point is I'm not sure to what extent they're just being allowed to freely roam and learn and study these things on their own, or if they're being harassed by tour guides or anything. But I've traveled a lot, and I've never, going to any historic site, I've never had any tour guide forced on me or anything. And if I paid for a room or for a stay that included some sort of tour guide or help like this, then I would know, certainly. But, yeah, okay, some idiots are going to go there. These are the comments at the start, okay. It's just not what I expected. I was depressed by the time I left. The tour was more of a scolding of the Old South. The brief mentions of the former owners were defamatory. They're saying these negative things about slave owners who, they owned people, right? They whipped them and treated them like animals, basically, and separated families and all that, kept them in chains. Yeah, it's kind of depressing to see that and hear about that. Again, like I say, I'm more on the right, even though I listen to a variety of left and right sources. But I think, as far as Charlottesville and everything, yeah, I never liked those Confederate statues. I always cringed when I would see Robert E. Lee in Richmond or wherever. Because I thought, this is the losing side, and we owe it to ourselves to know this history. It doesn't surprise me that people are going to these places and writing negative reviews because they expect the wrong thing. Maybe they're uninformed. Maybe they weren't awake during that part of school when we learned about slavery. Gosh, I remember learning about slavery when I was only 6 years old. I was a first grader. And I was just shocked to hear about how people were, they told us the whole story about how slaves were chained up next to each other on these ships. And they were forced to work their whole lives, and got nothing in return. And that really scared me at that early age. So I'm not sure where these people are coming from, where they never heard any of this stuff, where they think going to a southern plantation wouldn't have some kind of dark, depressing content to it. Like, I don't know. But at the same time, you have to wonder how much of this is being forced on them, how much of this are they allowed to come to on their own. My Aussie friend who brought this to my attention in the social studies page, he just says maybe some of the people that go there don't want to be lectured about it. Maybe they want to come to terms with it on their own or whatever. Maybe they don't want someone following them. Now, the article doesn't make it exactly clear to what extent they have these tour guides or if they've paid for them or if that's specifically part of the package. But I really get his point. I understand. And the other thing, of course, feeling depressed by the time you leave, okay, that makes sense. But maybe these people were coming for something they didn't expect or whatnot. There's something missing here. There's some disconnect. I think what we're dealing with is we're not dealing with white people, okay? This article is talking about some white people. No, it's just some idiots, and there are idiots in all races. And so these people, they go there, they expect something, okay. But, maybe they go there and they think, well, I understand the history, but I don't want to be lectured about it. Maybe they're being forced to have someone talk to them or what? But that doesn't really make sense. Gosh, I don't know. And talking to other people online and around the world, the most meaningful vacations for a lot of us are ones where we do feel depressed at the end. And in my experience, I can talk about Hiroshima. I went to the Hiroshima War Museum at the exact spot where the first A-bomb dropped. And this was a little more than 10 years ago. It was my first trip to Japan. And, you know, we spent the day there, and they have wax statues of skin melting, and you can see a rock that had a statue or a shadow burned into it. You know, you can see stones that have shadows through radiation burned into them. And it's very graphic, and it's more than I had ever known about the bombing, even though I had read a little bit about it. And I was depressed. I mean, I felt sad for a few days afterwards, but that was a life-changing vacation. And I've heard similar stories from people who went to Auschwitz or who went to the killing fields in Cambodia. Of course, there are some very dark places, but you emerge from that with a deeper humanity and a deeper caring, and in a fascinating take on a point of history that not many people get to learn, or not many people get to see firsthand, even though a lot of us should learn about it, including these idiots going to these plantations and not really knowing any of the history. The thing is, we do not need to compound racism with more racism. And that's the suspicious thing about this article, where it says some white people. The hell does that mean? Some white people. Some any people. Some idiots. Some losers. Some uninformed schmucks who thought they were going to Monticello or Mount Vernon or something and instead got to learn about slavery. Well, that's good. And also, okay, if they're writing these comments like, I was just so depressed, it's not what I expected, maybe to some degree it has to do with them as saying, wow, I had no idea how bad this was. Maybe I knew a little bit about the history, maybe I kind of knew what to expect, but this was far more depressing than I expected, which isn't really a negative review, but it is, I guess, a warning to people who would go to a place like this on vacation. Anyway, whatever you think, it's just another example of casual racism, of just throwing the word white people on something and expecting that to get clicks. And of course, you know, I looked, and you might look too, and we all looked. But you shouldn't trust articles that just say white people, especially articles that just say some white people. I mean, so what? Over and out.